Welcome to Experience Talks, where the voices of wisdom, creativity, and inspiration abound. Today we will learn about the production Tenor By Night, a musical premiering in Southern California, and then we'll converse with Mirabai Bush, co-author of the book with Ram Dass called Walking Each Other Home, Conversations on Love and Dying. First, two announcements. The 10th anniversary Bhakti Fest takes place in Joshua Tree, California on September 12th to 17th at the Joshua Tree Retreat Center. 3 yoga halls, 2 music stages, and wonderful food and more will commence. And information can be found on bhaktifest.com. That's spelled BHAKTIFEST.com. Next, the world premiere of the musical Tenor By Night is happening at the El Portal Theater in North Hollywood, September 22nd to 23rd. The box office phone number is 818-508-4200. Again, that's 818-508-4200. And we're fortunate to talk now with James Chiao, who is the Tenor By Night, about this production, loosely based on the author-composer's own life story as a Chinese businessman who immigrated to the United States and overcame the odds and obstacles to realizing his American dream. James Chiao, welcome to Experience Talks.
Hi, Connie. Thank you very much.
Well, I was very fortunate to see a preview of Tenor By Night, and I'd like to ask you to share with our audience how the idea for this came about and your amazing accomplishment to earn a master's degree in from CalArts at the age of 67, and here just a year later having this amazing musical.
Yes, the story actually started in 2013 when I held my a solo concert as Tenor By Night in Luckman Theater, Cal State, LA. At that time, I was Mannequin Man by day, Tenor By Night, because I love singing, opera, but then my day job is selling mannequins. We sell mannequins to major department stores in this country, like Macy's and JCPenney. So my family, my parents were musicians. My father was a well-known composer. My brother is also a well-known tenor. So my family were all musicians, and I was the one that didn't pursue music for some reason. But later on, I decided I need to, catch on my family legacy. So when I had my concert, Tenor By Night, I wasn't 100% satisfied. Even a lot of people congratulated me. So I decided to, go back to music school and earn my degree.
Wow.
So 2015, after I retired, I went to CalArts, and they asked me what I should do coming back to school. So I thought, okay, I should turn my concert Tenor By Night into a musical, Tenor By Night.
Yes, and it has sort of a subtitle, Mannequin Man by Day and Tenor By Night. Can you describe the plot line in a few sentences?
The plot line is that I'm in real life, I was Mannequin Man by day, so I was selling a lot of mannequins, but I was crazy singing opera at night in the house. So eventually my family was annoyed and tired of my singing. So my wife, Lily, would kick me out of the house. So I have to move to the mannequin warehouse and work and sleep and eat over there. And at night, with the help of a magician, my voice would wake up all the mannequins.
Oh, wow. And there's another big story behind that with a magician and lots of magic and miracles. And I think for our listeners, this is a great opportunity to not only hear great music, incredible dance performances. So there's 20 singers and dancers. There's 14 musicians. It's a professional orchestra.
Right.
Right.
It's a very exciting musical. The story is very intriguing, and the music is very nice. And I'm the composer. I think I inherited my father's genes in composing. Yeah.
Indeed. Well, I would like to again invite our listeners to check out Tenor By Night. There's a website, tenorbynight.com. And the El Portal Theater, there will be 2 performances on September 22nd and 1 on September 23rd. The box office number at El Portal is 818-508-4200. And thank you so much, James, for being with us, and we wish you much success for this great world premiere.
Yeah, our performance in Orange County was 4 performances, and they were all sold out.
Yes, it was very exciting to have a chance to see it. So we look forward to our listeners coming to see the musical, and of course you're there to greet people as well.
Yes, actually we are planning to extend the performances from 3 performances into 6 performances in El Portal now.
Oh, great. Well, if people check that out, yes.
Yeah, check it out. It will be 22nd, 23rd, and then 25th and 26th.
Excellent.
6 performances.
All right. Thank you again, James, and
thank you,
we look
Connie.
forward to having our listeners come to the performance.
Yeah, thank you for KPFK listeners.
All right. Our next guest is Mirabai Bush, but first let's hear from one of the Bhakti Fest headliners, Jai Uttal, with Radhe Shyam.
Radhe Radhe Shyam, bolo Jai Shri Radhe Shyam, 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 bolo Shyam. Radhe Radhe Shyam, Radhe Radhe Shyam, bolo Jai Shri Radhe Shyam, Shyam, Shyam.
Mirabai Bush is Senior Fellow and founder of the Center on Contemplative Mind and Society, which encourages contemplative practice and perspective in American life in order to create a more just, compassionate, and reflective society. Mirabai has also worked with Google on a workplace course called Search Inside Yourself, with the U.S. Army on a program for chaplains and medics, as well as many other organizations. She formerly directed the Seva Foundation Guatemala Project, which supports sustainable agriculture and integrated community development. Mirabai Bush is co-author of the book Contemplative Practices in Higher Education, Powerful Methods to Transform Teaching and Learning, and she created the CD Working with Mindfulness. In addition to being co-author with Ram Dass of Compassion in Action, Setting Out on the Path of Service, today we will talk with Mirabai Bush about her latest collaboration with Ram Dass, the book published by Sounds True called Walking Each Other Home, Conversations on Love and Dying. Mirabai Bush, welcome to Experience Talks.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
We are too. Walking each other home is a phrase that's been attributed to Ram Dass, who's the spiritual leader, perhaps best known for Be Here Now. So what does it mean, Mirabai, in the context of the book's subtitle, Conversations on Love and Dying?
Walking each other home has several important ideas embedded in it. Mm-hmm. Since it's a book on loving and dying, that when we're talking about home, we are talking about going toward the end of life. Yes. You know, in the sense that there are a number of like old spirituals going home and going home. So we like the idea of just walking toward that. And then the walking each other home is within that is the idea of how important we are to each other, how important community is, friendship, loving relationship, how we can help each other along the way, and we need each other along the way as we move toward the end of this life.
Yes, indeed. And Mirabai, how did the idea for the book come about?
It came about because, well, Ram Dass is 87 now, and 20 years ago he had a massive stroke. So he's been in a wheelchair all that time, and he's amazingly strong, healthy, and brilliant still.
Yes.
But his body has suffered from that. So we know that at 87, he's probably getting toward home. And he had spoken and written about dying for years, starting with Be Here Now in 1970. And at first we were going to put together everything or the essence of what he'd written and put it in a slim volume that people could have as they began to think about dying. But when we started doing that, he and I realized that actually, even though all the words are there, and all the words were there from the beginning, that having lived a long life and having been through a lot of pain and suffering, and been with great teachers and so on, he really knows about dying in a different way than he did before. He holds it in his body and spirit in a different way. And I wondered if we could capture that. And he has aphasia from the stroke, so there are long pauses between words often. And he doesn't speak in those lucid paragraphs he used to do when he was give those 5-hour lectures.
Yes.
So we thought having conversations, which we'd been doing anyhow, would be maybe a good way to capture the spirit of how he's holding it now. And I think it really worked.
Well, one of the beautiful things about the book, Walking Each Other Home, Mirabai, is how you situate the conversations happening during meals and then connections with Ram Dass's caregivers and things like watching the ocean together. In fact, the ocean and love, those are words that come up a lot. Can you talk about this feeling of the ocean of love and how does love relate to death?
Well, Ram Dass is in Maui and he is sitting in a chair most of the time looking out at the ocean. So it has become a great metaphor for him.
Yes.
And for a while, when he first moved there, he would say, I'm content. I look at the ocean and I'm content. But in recent years now, he's been saying, now I see the ocean as the ocean of oneness. The ocean reminds me and symbolizes for me that it's all one, and that this process of going home, the process of giving up your ego and coming to dwell in your spirit or your soul, is a process of, he sometimes says, standing on the shore, taking off your shoes, and then diving in. And he's really been diving in over this last period, and then just gazing at the ocean so much, I think, has made it very real for him.
Yes, indeed. So in his own years of life, especially the last 20 years, living beyond a massive stroke and being paralyzed on one side, and also even before that and perhaps since that time, comforting many people, accompanying people as they are dying. He just has a lot of experiences and stories.
Yeah.
And so how has the role of story come about in terms of sharing what's in the book, the stories and the vignettes? And is there a story you might like to share?
Well, I would say that Ram Dass was always taught by telling stories, as many of the great spiritual teachers over time have done.
Yes.
And he's often used the story of his own experience and of his own life as a story which many people could identify with. And I think one time he said, stories, it's hard to talk about spiritual things, but stories knock on the door to the soul. I like that. And, you can't rationally talk about death. We can talk about death, but not after death. And so I think by telling stories, he evoked a kind of space in which you can appreciate these ineffable truths.
Actually, when you were talking just now about Ram Dass and his experiences and sharing and explaining concepts through story, he shares a lot about his life experiences. And one of the remarkable things, Mirabai, about Walking Each Other Home is things that I've also learned about your experiences, including talking about how it feels to be growing older. I mean, Ram Dass is 87, but many of the people who have been with him, who went to India back in the 60s and 70s and so on, you know, people are looking at their own mortality, their own aging process. Can you talk a little bit about how did this book change you as you were writing it?
That's a good question. It did change me. And, I mean, I've been thinking a lot about getting old. I will turn 79 this year.
Wow.
And so, of course, I've had to think about growing old. And mostly I've thought about, you know, in each stage of life, that the practice is to reflect on what is your important or right contribution to make at each stage, how you should be spending your energy at each stage. And, of course, traditionally, you know, many have said that last stage of life has to do with reflecting on what your life has meant so far, mentoring and passing on, and whatever truths that you know, and then preparing for the great mystery at the end. So, for me, doing this book with Ram Dass seemed like the perfect vehicle for all of that. And I'm very aware, I have an 8-year-old granddaughter, and so as I got more involved in the book, I started having conversations with her about dying. She said, what's your book going to be about, you know? And then we'd have these just wonderful conversations about dying, and she'd, you know, ask the essential questions like, what happens? And so it's made me, I mean, the book isn't really written for 8-year-olds, although there are wonderful illustrations in it. But it is written for, you know, for most ages, and it is to help us reflect on this great mystery and recognize what is the best way in which to spend our lives while we are getting there. And that's where the loving part of the title comes through. But I also found in writing the book that because I did it by meeting with Ram Dass in his room many times, and I just go to his room, we'd have tea, I'd turn on my little iPhone recorder, and we just talk, and we talk about dying, grief, loving, friends of his, friends of both of ours who've died, and what our own thoughts are about what happens later, how we want to die. Ram Dass goes into great specificity about how he wants to die, who he wants to be there, and so on, where he wants his ashes to go. And in the process, and he said this was true for him too, that I didn't think I had like big blocks of fear about it, but because I'd done, you know, lots of practice with wonderful teachers, and they have often talked about dying. But I did find that bringing the subject closer, that just sitting and reflecting on it, reading about it, talking about it, that there were, of course, I had places in me that where I was storing some fear or just some unwillingness to really look at it and see if I was afraid. And that began to fall away as we kept talking about it. And, you know, we'd have a conversation, then I'd go back. It was the end of the night. I'd go to sleep and go for a walk during the day. And then whatever, like, thoughts and fears I had about dying started, you know, coming up. And by the time I finished the book, who knows what's going to happen at our endings. But my guess is that I'm being pretty peaceful about it now. And I don't think I could have said that before. So we're hoping that the book helps people with that. And a number of people who've read it so far have told me that they had that experience, that the book helped them look at their own concerns, fears, desires about dying, and help them let those go.
Well, that's an interesting observation, because one of the things that I wanted to talk about is this concept about fear. And it's interesting that you've talked to your 8-year-old granddaughter, because many people, certainly people in our generation, baby boomers and in Western cultures, there's been an avoidance of death. And also some cultures feel that talking about death means it brings it closer. And so to have these kinds of conversations, and also to start them early, to talk about what one envisions in dying with family members, friends, beloved ones. There's been a lot going on in the larger society around that, advance directives, things like that. But those are, in a way, formal processes. So what walking each other home, subtitle, Conversations on Love and Dying, Ram Dass and Mirabai Bush. This is the book we're talking about right now, to tell our listeners. And I feel that because it's like sitting in the living room with the two of you, and having these stories evoke certain feelings and thoughts, it really is very powerful that way. And then, speaking of stories, we probably don't have time for you to read a story, but what might be one when listeners get the book, and we'll talk in a minute about where they can order the book and where it's accessible, but what might be like the title of one of the stories that you would have read if you were going to read it?
There's a short 2-page story called Going Inward. I'll read the first couple of paragraphs so you get a sense of the setting of the book. After breakfast, we go upstairs where Ram Dass has his bed, a bathroom, his office, a wall of books, photos of friends, an altar with his guru's picture, a phone, an intercom. Lakshman, who helps care for Ram Dass, moves him from his wheelchair to a big, comfy, reclining chair and covers him with a blanket. The scent of sandalwood from incense burned at the morning chant downstairs floats up into the room. A few more lines. I jump right in and ask, you've written and spoken so much about death before this. Do you have a new understanding about death now that you're getting closer? Ram Dass closes his eyes and is silent for a long time. I have no idea what he'll say. I distance myself from the body, my body. How do you do that? I identify with the witness, with awareness, with the soul. The body is ending, but the soul will go on and on and on. I keep going inward to the soul. Is that different from before? My body's dying now, but I don't feel like I'm dying. I'm fascinated with how my body is doing it. We both laugh.
Thank you for sharing. And I want to remind our listeners, we've been speaking to Mirabai Bush, who with Ram Dass have co-authored Walking Each Other Home, Conversations on Love and Dying. And it can be found on your website, because I hope listeners will go on and find out more about you. It's mirabaibush.com. It's spelled Mirabai, and Bush is Bush, mirabaibush.com. Also, of course, Sounds True, which is the publisher of the book, and ramdass.org, ramdass.org, which is Ram Dass is the co-author, and Amazon and other places where people can get books. So I want to thank you so much, Mirabai Bush, for being our guest today on Experience Talks.
Thanks, Connie. I really enjoyed it.
Excellent. And
bye, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye. And we also want to thank today James Chiao, who shared about Tenor By Night. That'll be at the El Portal Theater in mid-September in North Hollywood. We also have thanks for our production staff, especially D'Angelo, our web diva for Experience Talks, Cynthia Friedlaub, and special thanks to our listeners and especially our supporters. Please like Experience Talks on Facebook and tweet us at ET Radio Show. Have a great life. And now enjoy Jayutal here, Shri Ram, Jai Ram.